Here in the middle of our rules about advocates and litigation, we have 3.4, which is fairness to the opposing party and counsel. So we actually have some rules about how you treat the opposing party and the opposing lawyer in the case. So here we go, 3.4, Model Rule 3.4a. There's a lot of provisions of this rule and not as many comments that we have to talk about. There are comments, but a lot of the comments merely restate provisions of the rule. So this video is going to focus heavily on the rule itself, and you can read through the comments on your own. They don't add that much to the rules. You shall not unlawfully obstruct another party's access to evidence or unlawfully alter, destroy, or conceal a document or other material having potential evidentiary value. A lawyer shall not counsel or assist another person to do such an act. So just to put this in plain language, you don't get to destroy evidence. We have an ethical rule. Lawyers are not allowed to shred documents that are damaging to your side, dispose of the murder weapon for the client, do anything to obstruct access to evidence, hide evidence, or destroy evidence, or change the evidence, like forge a signature where there wasn't one or something like that. Nor are you allowed to tell your client to do it. So you could be subject to discipline for telling your client, wow, you still have the murder weapon? You should really go and throw that in a storm gutter somewhere, or out in a lake where nobody will look for it, or to tell them a good way to dispose. The client calls you and says, how do I dispose of a body? You don't get to counsel them about how to dispose of their victim's body, right? And so we have a rule. I know what you may have seen on TV shows, but it's an ethical violation to do that. B, a lawyer shall not falsify evidence, counsel or assist a witness to testify falsely, or offer an inducement to a witness that is prohibited by law. By the way, for professional responsibility students, there's a number of great lawyer TV shows, as you know. And one of my favorite ones from an ethical standpoint is the show Better Call Saul, which is a spinoff from the series Breaking Bad. I actually confess I haven't watched Breaking Bad, but I do have watched all the episodes of Better Call Saul. And part of what's nice about it is it shows the lawyers not only committing ethical violations, but the inner turmoil that led them to do that, and the way that they rationalize it to themselves. And so it's an interesting portrayal. And one of the things that they do is the main lawyer in the case fabricates evidence, right? He makes a fake video to get one of his first clients off early in the series, to fool the police. He and his girlfriend do other little tricks with the land records office and stuff like that, and to falsify evidence. And we have a rule against that, in case you were wondering. So that's B. By the way, that we have a comment 3, that goes with B. What I've done with this lecture is taken the comments that go with one of these subsections, and I'm going to talk about with that, and then we'll move on, because I think there's too many subsections to then loop back and go through the comments. Okay, comment 3 says it's not improper to pay a witness's expenses or to compensate an expert witness on terms permitted by law. But in most jurisdictions, it's improper to pay an occurrence witness any fee for testifying that is improper to pay an expert witness. So this is an aside, and an important aside I want to make sure you understand. In your other classes in law school, you talk about 2 types of witnesses, right? Expert witnesses and lay witnesses. Well, for purposes of professional responsibility and the MPRE, we call them expert witnesses and occurrence witnesses. So a lay witness is an occurrence witness. It's important that you know the term, and it helps understand. The occurrence witness testifies about what occurred, what they saw or heard, or what happened to them, or what happened while they were there witnessing it, and so forth. Experts, of course, are usually not testifying about what occurred, but they're testifying about like what the industry standard is, or something like more abstract. And why this matters is you are not allowed, I'm sorry, you're not allowed to pay a lay witness or an occurrence witness to testify. And so, right, you may be able to subpoena them and compel them to testify, but you cannot say, I'll make it worth your while, here's $10,000. We're going to find a later rule. You're also definitely not allowed to pay them not to testify. Um, and so you're not allowed to pay people to testify. You can reimburse them for their expenses related to testimony. And so this means that if you have to buy them lunch in the middle of trial, cover their food and lodging, let's say they come from out of state or far away from where the trial is, and you can put them up in a hotel room, cover their travel costs and so on, and reasonable airfare and so forth to get to depositions and hearings and trials and all of that. And you as the lawyer can offer to cover that so that when people are testifying, they're not actually out of pocket, right? Those expenses. So you can reimburse them what it costs them to kind of provide their service to the fact-finding proceedings. And of course, most lawyers are going to pass those costs through to their client. As I mentioned in my Glannon guide, there's an open question right now, or some uncertainty about if you have a person who's a day laborer or an hourly employee and they have to miss work and lose wages in order to testify, can you comp them for that? And I think that the trend is towards saying yes, that's reasonable, and that's probably the majority rule. Now, please know it has to be reasonable. You don't get to like put the person on a tour around the world from New York to and like have them go through Europe and Asia and everywhere else, and a detour to Antarctica on their way to testify in Chicago, right? And so that would be unreasonable. Expert witnesses, you do pay, and boy, you are going to pay a lot for expert witnesses. You may be paying them more than you charge. Their billable rate is often greater than the lawyers, and you're going to hate that. And you can try to pass those costs through to your client too. You're not allowed to pay experts a contingent fee, like pay them more if you win, or a share of the case. These two rules: no paying an occurrence witness, but you can reimburse them for their out-of-pocket expenses, and you can pay an expert witness but not a contingent fee, are easy to turn into multiple choice questions on a test. That's why I'm spending some time on this. C and D are knowingly disobey an obligation under the rules of the tribunal, except for an open refusal based on an assertion that no valid obligation exists, and in pretrial procedure make frivolous discovery requests or fail to make reasonably diligent efforts to comply with a legally proper discovery request. So both of these are about discovery. So if the court says, look, we're going to have, you need to bring your client here for trial on Monday, you have to do that, or you are ordered to bring in a document or a piece of evidence or something that's in your possession, you have to do that. And if you're sure that the judge is wrong, then you have to put it on the record. That you don't get to just blow off the judge and then later on say, I know, but that's actually privileged and that's why I didn't do it. If it's privileged, assert the privilege in open court. Also, and then D is about discovery abuses. And so there are some lawyers and parties who refuse to comply with discovery requests and production requests. And there's others who use discovery, who have weaponized it merely as a way to like harass the other side. And both of those are ethical violations. E, in trial, allude to any matter the lawyer does not reasonably believe is relevant or that will not be supported by admissible evidence. Assert personal knowledge of the facts and issue except when testifying as a witness, or state an opinion as to the justness of a cause, the credibility of a witness, the culpability of a civil litigant, or the guilt or innocence of an accused. Now, I want to stop right here because not only do we see this kind of abuse regularly in courts, but it's completely off the radar of Hollywood scriptwriters who write about these trial scenes. It's like every movie or TV show I watch that shows a trial scene has the lawyer saying something like, I've known my client since childhood and is not capable of committing this crime or something. Well, if you're going to be a character witness, let's put you on the stand, swear you in, and cross-examine you. So you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed, also not allowed to like tell the jury, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I know in my heart of hearts that my client is right and the other side is lying, and I'm sure you know that too. That's referring to evidence that's not there. Also, if the evidence is not admissible, it's a polygraph test, or the police didn't have a search warrant, and so the evidence is being thrown out or excluded. Let's say as a prosecutor, you're not allowed to say, the witness gave us an extensive confession, but I'm not allowed to share it with you because he didn't get his Miranda warnings or something like that. You're not allowed to say that. You're not allowed to say, we found a lot of evidence. It was really incriminating, but I can't tell you because the police forgot to get a warrant or something. So as a prosecutor, you're not, and we're going to talk about this more with prosecutors later, as defense counsel, you're not allowed to say, my client was willing to take a lie detector test, but I guess we're not allowed to tell you that. And so if you're not allowed to tell them, don't bring it up in trial. Don't express your own opinion. Don't say, you can make the witness contradict themselves and show that they're lying, but you're not allowed to just say, I think that this witness is a liar or something like that. F, I promise we're almost at the end. You can't request that a person other than a client refrain from voluntarily giving relevant information to the other party unless the person is a relative or an employee or other agent of the client, and the lawyer reasonably believes that the person's interests will not be affected by refraining from giving such information. And so not only, I mentioned a moment ago, are you not allowed to pay people not to testify, you're not even allowed to ask them not to testify, with one exception that then has an exception to the exception. And so you're not allowed, it's kind of two exceptions. So if there's, let's say, other eyewitnesses and stuff, you're not allowed to approach them before trial and say, look, I'd really like it if you just got out of town and don't testify. I think about my client's family and all the good they've done to the community and stuff like that. So you can't ask someone to refrain from either testifying or even talking to the other side or the police or the opposing party. In a civil case, you can tell the client, please don't talk to the other side, right? That's very appropriate. You can ask the client's family members, please don't talk to if the lawyers from the other side approach you, don't talk to them, please just refer them to me as their counsel. And the same is true if you're representing an employer and it's their employee. The exception is, what if it's against their interests? And so, for example, if this is a case where it's a will that's in probate, and you're asking some of the heirs not to talk to the opposing counsel, you shouldn't do it, and they would benefit from the other side winning, then obviously you weren't allowed to do that. You're not allowed to ask people not to testify when it would be better for them if they did. And the same is true with employees. And I want to give you a quick hypothetical about that. Let's say that you're defending an employer against a discrimination suit or wrongful termination suit or harassment suit from one employee. Well, in that case, you really can't ask the other employees of the employer, your client, not to talk to the opposing party or counsel, because if the employer if the other party wins, let's say, and the employer adopts some policies to have less discrimination or harassment or more fairness in the workplace, that would actually benefit the other employees, right? So, and especially think like you could have another employee who's not part of the litigation, but they also were discriminated against or harassed or something. So they're going to get a kind of spillover benefit or side effect benefit from their coworker's lawsuit. And so keep that in mind. Okay, quickly comment 4. What about employees? You are allowed to advise the employees of a client to refrain from giving information to the other party. Um, and because normally the employees identify with their interests, and again, the exception is unless it's employees suing the employer, and that's what the case is about. Okay, and that concludes this lecture about Model Rule 3.4.